my! What a moment! What a thrill! First the Berlin Wall comes down, then the Brady Bunch comes back, and now it's Acton Kelly going steady. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy!
For 5 years before he died, Dustin Diamond, the former child star known for his portrayal of the iconic Samuel Screech Powers on Saved by the Bell, had finally found a semblance of peace. His post-sitcom years had been difficult, marked by 2 decades of legal and financial difficulties, embarrassing scandals, a humiliating sex tape, and his estrangement from his former Saved by the Bell castmates, caused by Diamond's publication of a 2009 tell-all that was highly critical of the show's cast and crew. But in 2015, following his arrest and a 4-month jail stint in Wisconsin for stabbing a man during a bar fight, Diamond began to distance himself from the chaos and controversies that had defined him for so long. The transformation was grounded in 2 factors. First, he came to terms with the fact that the public would always conflate the real-life Diamond with the fictional Screech, something Diamond had always hated and which, more than once, had led to him engaging in verbal and physical clashes with fans and others who referred to Diamond by his character's name. Second was a newfound relationship with a woman by the name of Tosh Jules, who provided Diamond with both companionship and counsel, encouraging him to reconnect with fans via small-scale comedy tours and conventions, where he embraced the chance to share his story, warts and all, to the delight of those who loved him as Screech. Jules would later say that these intimate interactions helped Dustin reclaim his narrative with honesty and humor. Jules also urged Diamond to try and reconcile with his former castmates, an effort that culminated with a sit-down interview in 2016 with Mario Lopez, in which Diamond expressed remorse for the things he said about Lopez and the others in his 2009 biography, and blamed a ghostwriter for making up many of the more controversial aspects of the book. He told Lopez, quote, "I want to put the tomfoolery and malarkey behind me for a clean slate." Not all of the castmates forgave Diamond. There is no evidence that any of the show's stars other than Lopez spoke with Diamond after he apologized for his actions, and he was excluded from the Saved by the Bell reboot that first aired in late 2020 and featured all 5 of the other original cast members. Diamond acknowledged that this snub hurt him deeply, but said that his efforts to reconcile and, quote, "own my faults are part of my healing process." Jules' relationship quickly became the cornerstone of Diamond's newfound happiness. She said he was the love of her life and that they were planning to have children together. But that all came to a screeching halt in the summer of 2020 when Diamond discovered a small lump in the left side of the neck under the jawbone. It was the height of COVID, and he initially refused to get the lump checked out, but by Christmas, the lump had grown too large and too painful to be ignored, and he finally submitted to a series of tests which revealed that he had stage 4 small cell carcinoma, a particularly aggressive form of lung cancer that had already metastasized to other parts of his body. He was told he just had a few months to live, but that with aggressive chemotherapy, he could possibly extend his time. Diamond started his chemo treatment in mid-January, but the prognosis remained grim. He called his closest friend, Dan Block, and told him how scared he was. "Find me a new body," Block quoted Diamond as saying, "I don't want to die." During the ensuing weeks, Diamond shuttled between his Florida home and the hospital to undergo chemo and to monitor the cancer's progress. But in late January 2021, doctors concluded there was nothing more that could be done and sent him home to rest. On February 1st, 2021, less than a month after Diamond was first diagnosed with cancer, he passed away, with Tosh by his side. Dustin Diamond was 44 years old. I'm Jason Beckerman.
I'm Derek Kaufman.
This is Last Days, Dustin Diamond.
As sick as Dustin Diamond was, and as quickly as the end came, his family and friends found a small measure of solace in the fact that he did not endure prolonged suffering. Tosh Jules noted that Dustin was spared from the drawn-out pain and physical toll that often accompanies small cell carcinoma, and that she was able to be with him until the end, to, quote, offer him a measure of peace as he passed. Peace was, unfortunately, not something Diamond enjoyed much of during his adult life. He was a complicated figure whose personality often set him apart, both in his professional life and personal relationships. He confessed to having had difficulty maintaining close relationships, as his brash humor and unpredictable behavior tended to alienate those around him. He reveled in the class clown role, and his peers always found Diamond funny, but he also struggled to navigate social cues and often found himself at odds with others in his circle. He also publicly admitted that he sometimes acted out of frustration with his career, which led to missteps that further distanced him from people who might have otherwise been close to him. Even before his very public ostracization in the wake of the publication of his tell-all book, he was estranged from his castmates. He said during a 2017 interview that prior to his 2015 reunion with Lopez, he had not seen any of his Saved by the Bell co-stars since the final iteration of the show went off the air over 20 years earlier. Nevertheless, when Diamond died, his former castmates expressed sadness over his untimely death and a deep sense of remorse over the breakdown of their relationship. Mark Paul Gosselaar, reflecting on their shared experiences, described Diamond as a, quote, true comedic genius, while Elizabeth Berkley and Tiffany Thiessen also expressed their grief. Mario Lopez, who maintained some measure of a friendship with Diamond in his waning years, noted that he shared with his former co-stars an unspoken sense of regret over the distance that had grown between them and Diamond, and remarked that, quote, the intensity of their shared experiences on Saved by the Bell had forged a connection that, despite life's complications, could not be entirely erased.
But many of the most touching tributes to Diamond came from those in the entertainment world who had grown up watching Saved by the Bell and felt a personal connection to Screech despite having never met Diamond himself. Comedians like Seth Rogen, Sarah Silverman, and Ken Jeong all tweeted their condolences and said that Diamond as Screech was a big part of their own comedy story. Mindy Kaling spoke for many of us, myself included, who were raised on Saved by the Bell, saying, quote, Screech was a part of my after-school routine, a constant presence in a time of change. Dustin Diamond brought such humor and humanity to that role. Saved by the Bell began as a reimagining of a short-lived Disney Channel series called Good Morning Miss Bliss. After that show's cancellation, the show was revamped for NBC, shifting its focus from a middle school teacher to a group of high school students navigating teenage life. Premiering in 1989, Saved by the Bell became a cultural phenomenon. Where I lived, the show aired late mornings on Saturdays, and it was watched literally by every young person I know, from middle school to high school, college, didn't matter. We work with people from 25 to 55 years old. They all have a personal relationship with the show, and in Screech in particular. My kids who are teenagers know exactly who Screech is. They have no idea who Dustin Diamond is.
Right.
They know the show, they're aware of the show, and they know just who Screech is. They can imitate him, and they don't even know how. He's still like on social media, the clips are.
Yeah.
It's remarkable that it's lasted this long.
It's strange to call the show timeless because it definitely looks like a 90s era show in its visual aesthetic, but it truly is because the characters on that show, Screech included, were archetypes. You know, you had the cool guy, Zach, you had the jock, AC Slater, you had the cute girl, you had the dork. And Screech played that role with a lot of empathy. When you said that earlier, there was something that was very accessible about him. You know, maybe Zach was aspirational. You wanted to be the cool guy who got the girl, but you were Screech. At least that's how I felt. And that's why the role really resonated so much with so many people. And it's why he became an icon.
He really did. I mean, he played this really over-the-top way. I'm not sure I can name another show that has spanned generations. You know, Friends had this incredible sort of, it was found by so many people during COVID because it came onto Netflix.
But it's a time capsule at this point.
But right, exactly. But I don't know anybody who sort of like young kids. It's just odd to me. Saved by the Bell. It's not a great show, right? You watch it, really campy humor, not that funny certainly to an adult. As a kid, it was funny enough, but it just has this sort of, I don't know.
It's comfort food.
Drawing you in. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and there really is
exactly.
something about it that, there's universal appeal about the high school experience or the middle school experience, and I think it still applies even today. The charm of the show was that it remained lighthearted and goofy with quirky storylines, while at the same time maintaining a consistent thread of innocence and goodness. There was nothing particularly relatable about it. The storylines were beyond farcical and made sense only in the bizarrely fictionalized world of Bayside High, but it was nevertheless catchy, and the show's characters were indelible. Of the show's 6 main characters, 5 had facially apparent attributes. There was Zach Morris, the charming, mischievous schemer and leader of the group, and his all-American, beautiful, and loyal girlfriend, Kelly Kapowski. AC Slater was the muscular jock with the million-watt smile, Jesse Spano, the ambitious, socially conscious overachiever, and Lisa Turtle, the fashionable, quick-witted trendsetter. But Screech's attributes were not as self-evident. He was the comedic heart of the show, but only because he was clumsy and often dim-witted. Endearing, but as the underdog, with a high-pitched voice, eccentric interests, and unrequited love for Lisa Turtle. It was his outlandish antics that provided the comic relief, and his often unrequited loyalty to Zach Morris that made him a vital member of the show's ensemble.
Well, Zach is awfully cocky, and he's always taking advantage of me. And sometimes I think he underestimates my intelligence. But he is my friend. I'm sorry, but I won't trade him for anything else in the world. Not even you, Bambi.
Screech was the counterbalance to the more conventionally appealing Zach and Slater and served to emphasize that friendship and loyalty, qualities that Screech had in abundance, were just as important as the looks, charm, and brains possessed by the others in the group.
Very few of the episodes revolved around him, but he was essential to them all.
I agree completely. The other thing that just dawned on me is that the show, as you mentioned, was not mean-spirited in any way. In an actual high school, maybe a guy like Zach Morris and Kelly wouldn't be friends with a guy like Screech, but in this universe, they were, and it made sense.
And there were episodes where Zach would kind of bully or take advantage of the loyal Screech. But by the end of the episode, it always came around that Zach was proved to be the wrong one, and he was the one who had to apologize to Screech, and everybody else took Screech's side against Zach, which would never happen in real life. Zach, the good-looking kid, doesn't apologize for anything, and everybody just apologizes for him. But in this world of Bayside High, that's the way it works. That's why Screech was so important to the show. Screech was originally envisioned as a supporting character, but as his popularity grew, he became a core part of the series' identity. Diamond was only 11 years old when he began playing Screech and brought an energy and naivety to the role that resonated with audiences, eventually making Screech a household name and an icon of pop culture, the lovable loser with the heart of gold. We spent some time trying to think of other characters from television shows who had a similar impact, both on the viewer at home and on the actors' careers. The most obvious is Steve Urkel, right? Yep. Jaleel White played Steve Urkel. They're sort of the same character, right? The nerdy center of the show.
Whose role expanded. The show was originally about the Winslow household, but because Urkel was such an indelible character, his role grew as the show went on, and so did Screech's.
And they were both kind of the lovable loser. Jaleel White and Dustin Diamond both failed, as we'll talk about a little bit more, to ever break free from that. I mean, to this day, Jaleel White, his kids go to the same school as my kids do, and other parents, when we see him, will say, hey, that's Urkel. No real idea what his first name is or what his name is. That's how he's known. It's harmed both Jaleel White and Dustin Diamond in efforts to get other roles outside of this sort of, this place that they are. A big difference, though, Jaleel White reports are that he was making $180,000 per episode of Family Matters, whereas Dustin Diamond was making about $10,000 to $15,000 for Saved by the Bell. And residuals for Jaleel White are huge. They never were for Dustin Diamond. That's the only real difference is the wealth they generate from it, which is a big difference.
It's a massive difference. It allows someone like Jaleel White to be at peace with what he sacrificed. Dustin Diamond, not having that financial windfall at the end of it, you've just given up something and you don't really have the soft landing. Yeah. So it's a bit more unfortunate. I think the characters it is the right comp, but there was something copycat about what Urkel did. Urkel was an over-the-top sort of caricature. He wore the jeans very high. He had a, did I do that sort of catchphrase. There was something a little more real about Screech.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit. They both tried to mature their characters. I remember Urkel tried to become Stefan Urkel, and he tried to be an older character, and Screech went to the college years. But they are very similar. I think that money differential that you identified, though, really paints Dustin Diamond's life in this tragic light that I don't think Jaleel White has.
That's right. Alfonso Ribeiro is another one. That's also a sidekick. Now, Alfonso Ribeiro's had a huge career after he's not Will Smith's career, but he's had a big career. He's been in movies. He's hosting the America's Video Show. He's done a lot of stuff, and he's made a huge career of it afterwards. He's been able to break through. But still, we know he's talked about this to our cameras before. He hates it when people ask him to do the Carlton dance. He hates having to relive that old thing. But at the same time, he recognizes that's how people know him, and that's where his fame is based. That's where his wealth is based.
They all have a little bit of, they bristle. And you can tell that with Alfonso and certainly with Jaleel White as well. But like Alfonso Ribeiro and Jaleel White, Diamond's post-series life and career were overshadowed by the iconic character he played on TV. Typecast by the role, he struggled to find acting opportunities that allowed him to demonstrate range or maturity. And while his co-stars moved on to other projects, Diamond remained tethered to the character, reprising Screech in spin-offs like Saved by the Bell: The College Years and Saved by the Bell: The New Class. After the various iterations of Saved by the Bell came to an end, Diamond sought to reinvent himself, but his post-show endeavors often reinforced the caricature of Screech rather than breaking away from it. He appeared in several reality television shows, including Celebrity Fit Club, Celebrity Big Brother, and Hulk Hogan's Celebrity Championship Wrestling. These appearances were marked by controversy and conflict, with Diamond frequently portrayed as the, quote, difficult or antagonistic participant. Instead of showcasing a different side of his personality or talents, these shows often leaned into the public's existing image of him as the bumbling, out-of-place outsider. The various shows' producers were understandably eager to capitalize on Diamond's notoriety, rather than providing him with a platform to redefine himself. Consequently, these reality TV stints did little to help Diamond escape the shadow of Screech. And Jason, in retrospect, these struggles with typecasting and public perception highlighted the challenges of growing up in the spotlight in general. And this is something that all child stars have to wrestle with, how to redefine yourself. We've seen it in the modern era, probably most profoundly with Miley Cyrus, I would say. She was Hannah Montana, squeaky clean Disney star. Then she went through a really rebellious phase, smoked salvia, did a lot of grinding videos, or what do they call it? Twerking videos. And now she's sort of settled into being a sort of more mature version of herself and not just the
She's
Disney
still
star.
quite risque, though. She's
quite risque.
That's the path she chose. I don't want to be unfair to Dustin Diamond, but Miley Cyrus is a real talent.
Massive
right?
talent.
She's not just successful. A lot of people are successful without being talented. She is both. And Dustin Diamond, I don't think ever had those chops. He never had the acting chops. And so I think, his character, he was Screech from the time he was 14. It's hard for a kid to break out of that no matter what. But B, I don't think he really had the chops. If he was a thespian, if he was a great actor, I think he would have had a chance. But I don't think he, and maybe Jaleel White too, right? It's hard to break out and be a great actor, great enough to break free from a character that everybody wants. Miley Cyrus is a good enough singer to be able to do that.
That said, I agree with you. Miley Cyrus is a different kind of talent, but Hollywood is voracious, and they really just preyed upon Dustin Diamond in a way and chewed him up and used him in these stunt shows. I mean, you listed some of them here. I remember him boxing. Do you remember him boxing? Arnold Horshack. It was Screech versus Horshack. Horshack was a character from the old Vinnie Barbarino show.
Welcome Back, Kotter.
Welcome Back, Kotter. He was a similar sort of pre-Screech era sort of comic relief character. And the two of them boxing, I was quite young at the time it happened. It was still just depressing to watch. It was a very, very sad spectacle. And I think Dustin Diamond wasn't able to make the best decisions for himself because he needed to get paid.
His efforts to stay relevant really were genuine, but they ultimately sort of reinforced the character or caricature of Screech, which made it harder and harder for him to develop an independent identity. And that sort of defined and confined him, I think, for the rest of his life.
I think that's right. Diamond's frustration at his inability to break free from Screech or find steady work as an adult manifested itself in some seriously bad decisions and self-destructive behavior. During the later years of his time playing Screech, he spent money recklessly and was ultimately compelled to file for bankruptcy multiple times. He later confessed that his money woes compelled him to accept any role he could get, including the aforementioned reality shows that paid him poorly and humiliated him regularly. By the mid-2000s, he was relegated to hawking Screech-themed t-shirts online. Later that year, he made the ill-advised decision to create a sex tape.
The title of which was Screeched, Saved by the Smell. A little too on the nose and gross, but that's what he did.
One of the epic titles. It was later revealed that the tape was a calculated publicity stunt. In an interview, Diamond admitted that he used a stunt double for much of the footage, and they had not actually participated in the explicit acts shown, and that it was all part of an attempt to gain attention and financial benefit during a period when he was struggling both professionally and personally. The tape received significant media attention, though largely for its notoriety rather than any actual content. It further sullied Diamond's reputation and distanced him from the wholesome image of his Saved by the Bell character. For many, the release of the tape marked a low point in his efforts to remain relevant in the public eye.
Diamond lapsed into relative obscurity for the next decade, popping up most often on leaked videos of stand-up routines, often when he was being confronted by trolls who found it enjoyable to heckle Dustin from the audience. All too often, he took the bait and was made to look the fool.
I'm not bitter, man. I played that character for 10 years. After a decade of Screech, I am fucking not bitter. I'm horny. That's all there is to it. Yeah, Todd, that's great. Yeah, thanks a lot. No, wait. Let's play the game Spot the Fag. There he is. How old's your grandma? I'll fuck the shit out of her. I'll tell you that right now.
Diamond's 2015 arrest and incarceration in Washington after the bar fight may have been his rock bottom, but it was also exactly what he needed. He later referred to the experience as, quote, the best thing that ever happened to him. He emerged as a changed man, expressing regret for his past behavior and a desire to rebuild his life and relationships. That's just what he did. He met Taj and tried to make amends with his former castmates, soften his persona, and accept that the public would forever equate him with the lovable sidekick he'd grown up portraying. And it paid off. He soon found a bit of success as a touring comedian and actually began making real money for the first time in decades. Although Dustin Diamond may not have had the time he deserved, he was at least able to enjoy moments of genuine happiness and fulfillment before he died. At the time he passed, the Saved by the Bell reboot featuring the other 5 original cast members, from which Dustin was excluded, was in production, and they worked into an episode the storyline that Screech had passed away. Real tears were shed by the actors, as the scriptwriters worked into the episode moments of reflection for the former friend, including in the episode's final scene, when Jesse, Zach, AC, Lisa, and Kelly gathered around their old familiar table at the Max Diner.
Hey, I'm still mad that little dweeb beat me at becoming Miss Bayside.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
He was so funny.
Yeah. To Screech.
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 Screech.